Hi everybody, very welcome to yet another live stream here on the Mentor Pilot channel. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. And since I haven't done this for a while, I sincerely hope that this is working. If not, you're gonna have to tell me in the chat. So, how are you guys doing? I have missed doing these live streams with you guys. It's always great to know that I'm coming here on the Sunday evenings, and I know that's going to be a couple of hundred other aviation geeks out there who just loves to talk aviation, and that's why I am here. I am here for you guys, and I am very sorry that I haven't been here for a few, well, it's almost 2 months now, I think. I went on vacation in Sweden, which was lovely, by the way, with my family, and I didn't release any videos during that time. And then I kind of have just been building up energy because, as you know, there's a lot of things going on in the aviation industry right now. There's a lot of things going on around my work, and I had to kind of focus on getting myself ready, doing the return to normal operation training that we had to do before we returned to flying. And I had to prioritize that. So as you've noticed, I have started producing videos. I am hoping that I'm going to be able to increase the kind of amount of videos that I produce from now on. And I want to send, and this comes from my heart, guys. I want to send a huge thank you to my Patreon crew. Let's see, that's here, up here. And why is that? Well, when I stopped producing videos, when I went on vacation in July, what happened to the channel was basically that all of the views, all the interactions, all the income from the channel just dropped away. Like, that's the way that the algorithm works. If you're not producing, you're disappearing basically. But since I have the members of my Patreon crew supporting, both with suggestions, helping me out with actually making stuff on the channel, and supporting me financially, it meant that I could really relax. So I could take those 2-3 weeks off and feel that it didn't really hurt me, neither financially nor the channel and the company that owns the channel at any point. And that was purely because of you guys. I know there's a lot of my Patreons watching this right now, so I want to say a huge thank you. And if you're watching this and you think that this dude, he actually does give me a little bit, there's a little bit of value here, consider joining the Patreon crew. It's a really, I think from being a part in the channel, it's a completely different experience because I am communicating with my Patreons all the time. So I ask them questions about, like, okay guys, so what do you think? What should we talk about on Friday? Should I make a video about this or that? And then they come with feedback about that. And from what they think, I can then kind of judge what you guys, what like the broader channel would like. So it's kind of like a fail safe for the channel, which me as a pilot obviously likes. So if you think that you would like to be a part of that, then consider joining the crew. You can go in for as little as €1 a month or as high as you want. It doesn't really matter. But if you go in at a $10 per month or higher, then you also get the premium membership inside of the Mentour Aviation app. And obviously at any level, you get part of my Discord, right? My Discord app, or my Discord server that I have exclusively for the members of mentorpilot.com and for my Patreon. So thank you very much, guys. Right, so the way that this works, if you haven't seen this before, is that you guys ask me questions. I have a feeling that there's going to be a certain amount of certain questions today, which I'm going to be very careful about answering. But you can ask anything, and you can ask in the normal chat, which I see that a lot of people are already doing. But if you want, you can see already that there's loads and loads of questions that's popping up. If you really want me to answer your question, then use the super chat function. All right, that will support the channel financially, and it will highlight the questions to me. So it's easy for me to find them. And I see that I already have 5 super chat questions. So I'm going to start with that, and I want you all to, bring your cup of coffee, because this is what this is. You are hanging out with me, basically having a cup of coffee, discussing stuff about aviation. And if you're wondering why the door is open, it's just because it's unbelievably hot here, and I don't have air conditioning in this room, so I have to have the fan running. Cool. So Ausbing is asking, hi Petter, I've had a fear of flying since the Germanwings 9525 crash. What has changed since then to make sure that people who are too dangerous to be in the cockpit aren't in the cockpit? Okay, so the Germanwings disaster is one of those very, very few disasters that were only bad. It didn't bring anything good with it. Most of the time, when there is a disaster, when there's a crash of some sort, we learn from it. Like, you know, it's very unfortunate when it happens, but from the investigations, there will be improvement to safety, and with that improvement, the whole aviation world will become a little bit safer, and that's why we become safer and safer and safer every year. Now, the German wings accident, or I wouldn't even call it an accident, it's murder basically. It's different because that was premeditated and it came from the pilot, and that should never ever happen. So why do I say that didn't bring anything good with it? Well, that's because what tends to happen when you have a major disaster like that, which is caused by premeditated action on behalf of the pilots, is that the authorities are going to be pressed hard by the general public to increase the levels of checks of the mental health of the pilots. All right, it makes sense. The general public will say, well, we can't have people with any kind of mental problems in the cockpit. So you, authorities, you make sure that you have a lot of tests, and that you know, if anyone shows any sign of this, you ground them immediately. Right? On the surface, that looks like a really, really good idea. But if you think one step further, what actually happens is that it drives potential problems on the ground, because pilots are humans, just like everyone else. Just like you. If you have a sudden problem in your life, if you lose a spouse, or if you have financial problems, you can get into depression or psychological unhealth, basically. And if that is then connected to a stigma, which is like, I can't tell anyone about this, because if they think that I am not feeling well mentally, then they're going to take my job from me, and then I'm not going to be able to fly, and no one is ever going to hire me again. And then people will not go and get help for those problems. All right. So even though the initial kind of knee-jerk reaction is to, all right, just put extra checks in there. They have to be superhumans if they're going to be in the cockpit. That is not possible to do. So, and the authorities, to their great honor, has actually thought about that. So there hasn't been many changes. What has happened is that there's discussions within the German license authorities when it comes to their medical authorities, to make sure that for example, psychological evaluations that would have grounded the pilot in this case is actually shared with the airline. In other European countries, that is the case. So a doctor who says that you're not fit to fly can actually share that information, and the airline can take you off the roster. And I believe, and I'm not quote me on this because I'm not well versed with the actual rules, but I believe that was not the case in Germany. As in, the doctor could tell the pilot that you're not fit to fly, but it was up to the pilot to actually tell the airline that he wasn't fit to fly, and that didn't happen. So there was some stuff about that. And then, of course, there were initially some talks about having always a second person in the cockpit by law. Now, that was adapted by a lot of airlines, but it never really became an official rule. So some airlines has it, some airlines don't. Some airlines had it even before this accident. But the fact is that you have the system still works. You can still trust the people inside of the cockpit. This was an anomaly, and I am very grateful that this anomaly hasn't caused more damage than what it could do. So I don't know if that makes you feel any better about it. And I realize this is quite a long answer, but I think that it deserved a long answer. We have to be very careful with these kind of things, and be very careful with how you stipulate new rules to make sure that they don't become counterproductive. All right, makes sense. Cool. Will Engel, I'm so happy to see you, Will. I really am. All right. I know Will is one of my patrons. He's one of the supporters of the channel. He's very active on the both inside of the Mentour Aviation app and in the Discord server. And he's been very ill, and he's now saying that, well, just wanted to say welcome back. I also wanted to let you know that I'm in Dallas currently undergoing 12 more weeks of radiation treatment to make sure that all of the tumor has been eradicated. I really hope with all my heart that this radiation treatment is successful, and that you feel better overall, and that you have many, many years in front of you, Will. As always, if there's any kind of help that I can give or any support that I can give, just let me know. I really hope that you're feeling better, and I'm happy to have you here and engaging again. Um, so Evan W just had my first flight back after shutdown. Yay! Great stuff. Me as well. Like from the mid of July, I have been flying now. Not much. We're flying. We will in July we were flying at about 40% of capacity. Now we're flying at about 70% of capacity, and um, I am grateful. I am so grateful that I can continue to fly. I know that a lot of my colleagues out there are not as fortunate. My heart breaks every single day when I'm watching. I'm part of a Facebook group called European Pilots, and every day there's a new story about someone who has lost their job, who's been in the Middle East and coming back, and there's support groups about what to do. And I'm actually like, I'm going to do a live stream. I don't know exactly when, probably maybe next week, with a friend of mine, a pilot that I actually did fly with. Well, he was a colleague of mine in the beginning of my career, and then our path kind of diverged. He went to another airline and so on, and then he stopped flying, and he's now engaged in in an initiative that's there to help pilots change tracks. So people who's been in the business, who've been furloughed or are out of the business now and cannot find another job for a few years, his company, Cockpit coaches, are helping to try to rearrange them to get into a different line of work, at least for a while, until the market kind of stabilizes and they can get back into the cockpit again, or permanently change their work, or start up something on the side that can help them. So Martin Stork is his name. I'm going to bring him on here for a shared live stream where we're going to be discussing the kind of things that you need to think about if you're in that kind of position, to try to come with some tips about how to help people in that situation. But congratulations, Eva. Great to hear. Still, 77. Why is there blinking 8 before the IAS Mach number on the auto throttle setting on the 737? That means that you have an overspeed event. All right. So if you, for example, try to set the speed higher than your maximum speed, you will get that blinking 8. It's showing, the auto throttle is showing basically that this is not possible. It's an overspeed. You can get an alpha as well, which is an underspeed warning. Okay. Christian Jackson, very important question. How often do you use your pink phone? That is only used when Vladimir Putin calls. All right, so this is direct line to Russia, and so it's very rare that I use it. Nah. At the moment it's not connected. We found out that having those phones are really, really cool. However, every single company that you try to call now, you have like press 1 to go to A, press B to talk to C, and that doesn't work with those phones. You can try as much as you like, it's not possible. Okay, so it becomes a little bit less usable that way. Dave, what's your favorite in-flight meal? Well, my company doesn't provide in-flight meals, sadly enough. So my favorite in-flight meal tends to be some gorgeous pasta that Sandra has made up for me that I've taken home from home. And to be honest, that sounds like people are like, what? You're not getting any food? How's that possible? What do you do? And the fact is that that was actually something that the pilots chose. They were given the option way before I started, back in the beginning of 2000, I think. They were given the option that, do you want us, the company, to provide you food, or do you want a slightly higher salary and get your own food? And most pilots who've been flying short to medium hauls knows that, if you can kind of balance your own diet and you can take food with you from home, not only is it better tasting, but it's also is more handy. You can balance the way that you like it and stuff. And some people want vegetarian, some people want pasta, so they actually opted for the higher salary. And then from that day, we've been carrying our own food with us. And I have like on a long day, I have 2 frozen boxes with me. And I put them back into the oven when I need them, heat them up on a long leg, and I eat. So that's the answer to that. I haven't had the fortune to try like first class meals and stuff, which I'm sure is gorgeous, and I would love to try that at some point. Right, before I go for the next super chat question, I'll take some normal questions from the chat as well. This guy's talking with Putin. Yeah, no. only on very important stuff. And of course, Donald Trump, he calls to get some hints now and then about smart things to say on his briefings. Where do you ask questions or interact with the stream from MDM Aviation? Where are you talking now? Right, so like, you know, that's what I said in the beginning of the stream, that there's so many questions that the only way for me really to choose is that I prioritize the super chat questions that are coming in, because they pop up on my screen. I can see them, and then the normal chat kind of continuously rolls with hundreds of questions at a time. So so that's the way it works. But I take from the normal chat as well. Mentor, hi Mentor, do airline pilots ever have to join the traffic pattern? Yeah, it happens. Sometimes you, well, when we do base training, for example, we do normal traffic patterns, just like you do with the Cessna. But you can get into like a visual approach as well. And in that case, you can end up on a downwind and kind of take part in the pattern, but it's very rare. Normally, you are kind of going for a straight in visual approach if you're doing that, or a straight in instrument approach of some sort. Cool. So more questions here. Here it comes from Balai Sharakumar. Hi, what's your thought on the Air India crash landed? Okay, so you probably noticed that I haven't done any video on that yet. I tend to be very careful with making videos about incidents when there's very little information coming out. And you'll notice that as the days progresses now, there will be more and more information. There are excellent sites which give you pure data. The Aviation Herald is where I normally go myself. I want you to check that out and do support them. Like, there is a support part of the Aviation Herald, which I have actually supported them with on a couple of occasions. Do that, because I think that they're doing a fabulous job of giving factual information about what's going on. All right. So there are a lot of things that I can say about this incident, and it's looking very strange from a couple of different perspectives, and it's looking sadly familiar in others. Okay. So the only thing, like, I could do a video about it, but the only thing that I could do in a video like that is just stating, what do we know right now? Because for me to sit here as a trainer, as a 737 captain and training captain, and speculate, like, yeah, I bet the guys did this and then that happened, and then it turns out to be completely wrong. Even if I'm right, it's not showing any kind of respect to the victims, all right? To the two sadly deceased pilots, colleagues, to the victims in the cabin, to the people that are being hurt. For me to speculate on it would be disrespectful. All right. So I don't know if you've noticed it. I hope that you have, that I've started a new series. I'm not only going to do those videos, by the way, but I've started a new series where I take old crash investigations or incident or accident investigations, and I tell you, I go through what happened, and I give you the kind of insight that I have about it. I hope that you like it, because it seems from the analytics that people are watching it much longer than my normal videos, and they are a little bit longer as well. But please let me know what you think about them, because I love doing them. Actually, there's a lot to be learned. That's what I was saying in the beginning of the live. You can learn so much from these unfortunate incidents, and that's very much part of an airline pilot's job, to sit and analyze what has happened to other people, and actually try to improve from it, try to make sure that doesn't happen. And in my case, since I reach so many people, I feel that it's a little bit my duty to explain to people exactly how we think as well, and what, you know, how I would think in a situation like that, or why the people might have thought like that, right? Because in a lot of cases, if I start to go back into the old incidents, you will see that those incidents have actually caused new procedures. Like, this is the reason why we now do that. Right? A case in point is, for example, after the Helios accident, you know, where they took off and they misinterpreted the pressurization, the cabin altitude warning horn, as the takeoff configuration warning horn, and while they tried to fix that, they lost consciousness. After that, there was a barrage of new stuff coming in. So, like, first of all, the pressurization mode selector was not in the checklist to be in auto. It became a checklist item after that. There was a new light installed in the cockpit that was distinguishing between takeoff config warning and cabin altitude warning, because the sound is the same. There was loads of new procedures that came after that. So now, if you look at it, like, how could they do that? How was that possible? But back then, these things didn't exist. They came in because of that. So, you know, these are the kind of things. This is the reason why I started that series, and I hope that you guys like it. So, anyway, I can answer specific questions. All right. If you ask me, like when we talk about the India crash in Kerala, there are specifics that I can talk about. I can explain things like how we reason during a go around, when we would reject a landing, for example, what we think about tabletop runways, stuff like that. But I will not go in and talk about what these guys did, right? Jan's views. Join your Patreon at the beginning of lockdown as I felt so bad for you and fellow pilots. So pleased to see you back doing the job you love. Stay safe. Well, thank Jan. It's great. Like I said again, thank you so much, all of you in the Patreon crew. You've really made my life much easier. It's taken down the stress level a lot, okay, to know that I have you guys there. So, huge thank you. And I'm glad to be back. So, Dan Rocker is asking on the normal chat, are there accident reports with the other video reports? I don't know what you mean by that, Dan. They're like, what I'm using is I'm going into the actual official accident report, the finished final report. They always have a very, very good explanation of what happened, you know, minute by minute. And then they have conclusions and they have safety instructions at the end. So they're really good. And you can find them on all the aviation authorities' homepages. So in case of the Qantas 32 accident, it was on the Australian Aviation Authorities homepage, for example. Karsten, Jill. Karsten, great to see you here, Karsten. Karsten is another long-time supporter of the channel. He's been here for ages. So, hi Petter, when reading back radio frequencies, you sometimes hear decimal and sometimes point. Why is that? It's just what that pilot learned. Okay, let's see what I say. 135 decimal. Yeah, I think I say decimal, actually. I think also there's a slight difference between Americans and Europeans in here. Doesn't matter. As long as it's a very clear, you know, as the read back is clear and you both understand it. This is the key to good radio communication. All right, it starts with the sender, then it goes to the receiver. All right, the receiver then reads back to the sender, and in a perfect kind of closed loop, the sender, the original sender, then reads back that that's okay as well. And the only place that you have that complete closed loop that I've heard of is basically in Finland and in Estonia, I think, because there they say like Mentour 360 descend flight level 180, and I understand descending flight level 180 Mentour 360, and then they respond with their call sign like Tampere control. So you have like 3 different calls, and when you have that, that's a closed loop and it works. All right, you should try that with your spouse sometimes. it's funny because you'd be amazed to see how many times that simple miscommunications are actually happening. Aeronaut Frenzy on the super chat. Thank you very much. All of you guys who've been sending in super chat, thank you very much for your support. Right, it's great. Aircraft performance engineer here. Very nice. I want to know from a pilot's point of view, which tech subject in aerospace sector needs an urgent innovation? That's a great question. Which tech subject in aerospace sector needs an urgent innovation? I'm gonna have to think about that one a little bit, because it's not like there are certain things that needs innovation. As in, like, we're constantly looking for better not navigational equipment, because GPS is very good and IRS is very good as well, but we urgently need to redo the airspace structure. There's no question about that, and they're working on that, because the way that we're doing it still is ancient. You know, we're flying basically zigzag across the continent, where everything from environmental reasons to time saving to economy should dictate that we should just go straight, right? But I know that it's hard from kind of a planning perspective to make that happen. But it should happen. Like in this day and age, we shouldn't be flying between different RNAV points, going zigzag up. I don't have to go via Paris to go to Eindhoven, but that's what we're doing. So that definitely requires it. Other technical things inside of the cockpit and stuff. I mean, that's, you're seeing how slowly things happen. And this problem with the 737 MAX is just showing that you have to be very careful with innovation, and this is going to slow down innovation in aviation even more. So it's a very interesting question. I don't have like an immediate smart answer to it. If I did, since I am a little bit of an entrepreneur, I would probably be working on it myself. Send me that question actually via email. Right, go mentor.pilot@gmail.com. Send me that question. I'll see if I can come up with an even smarter answer, and specify a little bit if there's an area that you're thinking about. Sarah Ansel, hey Sarah, great to have you here. Can you give the best advice to pilots if they have been made redundant? Oh, the best advice. Okay. So if you've been made redundant, you need to apply the PIOSE model. Right? This is why I created that video. Remember how to deal with crisis in the beginning, because it's likely that you're going to have a very emotional response in the beginning, which is going to be anger, it's going to be frustration, it's going to be fear. Those things are all working against you. You need to tackle this as you would in the cockpit. Okay, so an engine has gone. In this case, your financial engine. How do you deal with it? Okay, so you know what the problem is. The problem is going to be initially income, long term, how do I get a new job? Okay, problem. Information. What jobs are there? And also, is there anything I can do in the intermediate term? Do I have a degree? Do I have something to kind of go back on? Did I work with something else before I became a pilot? Is it viable to go back in order to get an income source? Doing that, all right? Think not so much about, okay, I am a pilot, I can only become a pilot, and I can only be a pilot. Because that's not going to help. Right? In a situation where you have an airline going bust, then you're always going to have airlines picking up the slack. Okay. In the situation we're in now with COVID, all the airlines are struggling. Everyone is firing people. So there is very little openings inside of the airline business right now. And where there are openings, there are literally thousands of qualified people that are looking for those openings. Now, this is not going to be for a long time, right? This is a temporary thing. This is also very, very important to remember. I think that it will probably last up to about 2 years. It could be longer on the long haul side. And the short haul side, in 2 years, we're going to be back. Definitely. So think about it like that. Okay, so how do I bridge that? What can I do? Is there anything I want to do right now? I saw a brilliant tweet from a friend of mine on Twitter. I hope you follow me on Twitter, by the way. Look for Mentor Pilot. Which I think, was it Ben? No, it was Scott, who said that he was made redundant. He's been made redundant twice in his career. On the first one, he got married. The second one, he had a child. And it was just fabulous experiences. Like, he had a few months where he could just focus on family. Obviously, that will require you to have a little bit of savings, and that's going to come up to my next point. But you can look at it from that perspective as well. Like, very rarely do you have a chance in your life to actually just sit down and focus on yourself. Do you want to, there are, for example, now several in universities. I got an offer just a few weeks back through my airline saying that there was a university up in Cork in Ireland who's basically recognizing your ATPL studies as 2 years worth of a 4-year program. So if you jump onto that, you can actually get I think it was a bachelor in economics in 2 years rather than in 4 years. Maybe that's not something, if you don't have a degree, maybe it's time to take up that. And this goes to my next point. If you're in this business, all right, first of all, you need to save up money to get your license, all right, to get as little debt as possible. And then, once you're done with that, when you start working, you need to pay off debt, but you also need to build a buffer, right? You cannot only pay off debt, you have to build up a buffer. So you should probably divide that into 2. And ideally, you should have 8 months of costs on your buffer kind of account. That can be a account that you can liquidate, as in like put it into the stock market, as long as you can get the money quickly. All right, you cannot have something that is pent up for 5 years. No, you have to have something. Okay, now you have to have that. because those 8 months is crucial for you to in order to apply your PIOSE, problem, information, options, select, execute, evaluate, PIOSE. You have to have that in order to do it calmly and nicely. Because if you sit with a 2 week salary on your account, and if you don't get that next paycheck, you are not going to be able to pay your rent, your food, your school bills. In that case, you're going to panic. Okay, it's just like you work just like with everything else. Okay, if you have time, you can make smart decisions. If you don't have time, it's likely that you will make less smart decisions. So remember this, because this industry is volatile. All right, you can ask any pilot, almost any pilot out there will have been furloughed or have been fired at least a couple of times. Okay, it's because the industry is always the first thing to be hit in case of an economic disaster. It's very, very small distance between being a successful airline and an unsuccessful airline. An unsuccessful airline goes bust very quickly. You've seen it happen over and over again. So this needs to be part of your threat and error management skills. Okay, now if I am going to, because I've noticed that there's a lot of questions about this, and I've noticed that a lot of people need kind of help about this. And this is not only airline pilots, these are people everywhere. It goes for any occupation that you're in. You need to follow these rules. And I'm actually working on creating a kind of a course built on how we deal with problems in the cockpit that you can apply to your normal life. Now, if you're a member of the mentorpilot.com, which I hope that you are, if you go in there, you can become a cadet member. It doesn't cost you anything, but it means that I have your contact details. When I made these courses, when they're ready, and that includes the Fear of Flying course that I'm also working on, you will know it. I will be able to send out an email to you saying that now this course is available if you're interested in it. Okay, so go into mentorpilot.com. If you haven't done it before, right now at the end of this live stream, and just register yourself. Okay, so that I can reach you, so that you know about it. It's different. Even if you're an app member, you need to go to mentorpilot.com and register yourself as well, because they're two different entities, and I just could not get my developers to get that to work, unfortunately. Sorry guys, I'm way out on a tangent now. Go back to aviation. Man, I'm really far behind here. Okay. So that was for Sarah. Username. That's a great username. Will pilot training plus recruitment recover by 2023? Yes, to a certain extent. And I can't answer for all markets, obviously. But yes, in 2023 to 2025, you will see a significant increase of the demand for pilots. So given that it takes 2 years to train, if you have a little bit of ice in your stomach, you can actually start now. Now, I really feel for the people who've just finished their training, because they're getting into a very bad position. But then again, it's not all dark, guys. I got into the worst crisis before this, which was after September 11th, and I managed to find a job, right? It's not easy. I'll not sit here and try to and tell you guys that it's easy, that you're going to get a job, no problem at all. There's going to be a rough patch now, right? But it's up to you to show your character. It's up to you now to show, what do you do? How do you use this time? How do you show an employer in maybe 6 months, a year, or 2 years that you've spent this time since you got your license in a good way, right? Because they will ask the question, and you will want to try to impress them. And that's going to be you showing grit, you showing determination, showing stamina. So like, okay, yeah, I saw this happening. I talked to my school. I set up a 2 monthly roster to come back in and do a flight training, a simulator ride, an MCC training ride. A lot of the schools, look at Virtual Aviation up in Cambridge, by the way, it's a great school. They have set up a program for their alumni so they can come in and do training. The same with the OSM Flight Academy in Stockholm. That's what you can do. And then on the side, go back to flip burgers, go back to whatever you can to bring the money in so that you can sustain yourself, and just send out those applications, monitor the market, put yourself into holding pools wherever you can, okay? William Henwood, will there be an option to introduce unsecured loans via the APC in the future? Okay, so APC, let me give a sip of this. APC will open very soon, guys. All right, the Airline Pilot Club is still there. As you can imagine, there has been issues with the banks. The banks are very risk averse, and in a situation like this, they become extremely risk averse. So we have been talking, and we still are. All right, our intention, our fundamental intention, is to do exactly what we set out to do, which is to find the right people, get them into the right schools, get them set up with some kind of funding, and then get them into the airlines. Okay. Now, COVID has come in and threw a big snowball into the machine. Doesn't mean that we're giving up. That's not how we work. So there have been some changes to how we're going to do this. But yes, the answer to your question is that our original funding model is still being considered. It's not going to be implemented as in such a big, large scale as we were hoping for before COVID hit. But we are still hoping for, we're still working on getting it to work in certain markets. Okay. And then as the demand increases, which I fully, I've never been more sure about anything than I am about the fact that at 2025, you're going to see the worst pilot shortage that we've seen in our lifetime. Okay. Why do I say that? Well, I say that because you have, just like what we were counting on with the Airline Pilot Club in the beginning, we have the baby boomers going into retirement. That's happening even quicker now. So you see the furlough schemes and the schemes that are doing the big four in America. They are offering pre-retirement to these people because most of them would not want to go in with maybe 2-3 years left to retirement and do another type course and another OCC course and go into a new airline and get to the bottom of, all of that. They would just say, no, I'm gonna go out and pick berries instead and enjoy my family and my grandkids or whatever. So you're going to see a lot of people that would have been retiring in 3 years, retiring already now. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing that happens, obviously, is that people are afraid of training. Okay, when I said earlier that you need to have ice in your stomach to start your training now, I really mean that. Okay, so there's people who have ice in their stomach and who really want to become pilots and stuff. They can see that you should, when these conditions are bad in the market, that's when you should be training, because normally it is about a 2 to 4 year cycle. It takes you 2 years to train. So if you're at the bottom of the market, that's when you should be training, so that when you're at the top of the market, that's when they can employ you. All right. That's how it normally works. Now, COVID is something new, so a little bit of caveat for that. But anyway, if people are now watching this and they're saying, no way I'm going to go in and train, all right, I'm not going to risk taking a loan or whatever for this. Well, then you have another thing that's happening, which is at the end of this, when there is a big market chunk that, it's not like people are going to stop flying. If people stop traveling all over the world, then it's all over. But neither you nor me think that that's going to happen. I think that we're going to see a change. So I think that some really, really strong players, the strongest players, and you'll see them crystallizing in the next few months, in, for example, Europe, are going to take over the marketplace. So you're going to see the giants. You're going to see Ryanair. You're going to see Wizz Air coming in, maybe EasyJet. And they are going to just look at this as the position of a lifetime to come in and just grab market shares. Those are going to need pilots, okay? Because they are going to try now to grab as much market share as possible, and they're going to start to expand. So in a few years, when they come and they're like, we need pilots because we are going to expand into wherever, then if everyone is retired and no one has trained, there won't be any pilots, and some pilots would have changed career, right? So yes, the Airline Pilot Club, we are still working on that. And the crucial, like the indicative assessment, and I cannot overstress this, guys, all right? The indicative assessment will be made available for you, okay? It's going to cost you less than 100 euros to take. And it is the best way to tell you from the onset whether or not you have what it takes, or if you need to improve something before you go for your training. So I will encourage anyone who's thinking about going into this industry to go to the Airline Pilot Club, get the indicative assessment, do it, get the feedback, see what part of your personality and stuff that needs to improve, if you need to improve on your numerical skills, your language skills, or something else, and then use that to base your decision on whether you want to go further. Right? And if you want to go further, we are going to try to facilitate to some of our original schools that's going to be part of this. Right? We already have a few schools that's going to be expanding as we build the network. But at the moment, we are going to be, I can't tell you yet which ones these schools are going to be, but they're going to be a few schools, right? That we can say, you can use this, 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 and this, and this. And then we will see about the funding, right? But right now, don't count on any unsecured funding, because the way that the banks are working, that's only going to be available in a few separate cases, hopefully, right? But that will come, all right? We're working on that, so don't worry. That was a long answer. Scott Laurie, great to have you here, Scott. Yet another one of my patrons. Hi, Peter. Do you and the cabin crew train for proper evacuation of a 737 from a passenger perspective? Of course we do. Absolutely. I mean, like, an aircraft needs to be certified to be able to be evacuated in 90 seconds on half of the available emergency exits. That's a certification requirement. That needs to be done together with trained cabin crew. So the cabin crew trains almost all the time. They brief every single day. They have security procedures, and they have their initial training, obviously, where they train on how to get the evacuation done. Now, from a cockpit point of view, we train it every single OPC or LPC, so every 6 months. All right, we brief it every day. Every morning on the first flight of the day, or in the afternoon, if that's the first flight of the day, I have to brief the how I'm going to do, in case I have an engine failure, we need to reject the takeoff. How am I going to do that? How are we going to do the evacuation? What are we going to do in case we have an engine failure that we actually bring into the air? And that's to keep it fresh. So every single day we do that. And then everything is done for the safety of the passengers. Like this, the safety of the passengers and the crew is everything we care about. That's number 1, 2, 3, and 4 on our priority list. So yes, we are. Maciek Kuchera. Hi, could you please explain a little bit the role of safety pilot who is flying with you when you train new pilots? He just looks over the cadet's shoulder picking up errors. No, the safety pilot is there for one very peculiar reason. All right, we keep the safety pilot, which is a normally first officer who's being scheduled in the beginning of the training of a new cadet, to be there in case I get sick. All right, so in case the captain or the training captain becomes incapacitated, we need to have a crew member who has been trained, who can get the aircraft down safely. Because even though the cadet has been checked out on the aircraft in a simulator, has done his base training, until he or she is safety pilot released, they haven't demonstrated in the real aircraft that they can safely land the aircraft by themselves, completely by themselves, without any help of me. Obviously they can land the aircraft, but I might be sitting there and I might be helping them out and pointing out things. But what about if I disappear? If there wouldn't be a safety pilot there, this cadet would be there by themselves. And until I feel confident that this pilot we've discussed these scenarios, they've gone through all the training, we've ticked off the FCALT boxes, as in the competency box that says that this person can do this. When that is done, and it normally takes up to 30 sectors to do so, then we can safety pilot release them, and then I have basically said that this person would be able to get this aircraft down by himself or herself easily. So that's why the safety pilot is there. It's not to point out errors. In fact, they shouldn't. The only time, like, I brief them clearly on the only time that they're supposed to speak up in the cockpit is when they see a safety concern. So what tends to happen is that, for example, we are discussing something and we might miss a radio call. In that case, they will speak up and say, guys, I think that was for us. And then, all right, chair, check it out, because the training is a lot of discussions going on. Or if they see something that, okay, these guys obviously, they shouldn't be continuing this, they can go in and they can give their suggestion, like, guys, you're over speeding, or whatever. So they're there to point out safety concerns. But SOP concern, for example, they should just be quiet, because most of the times when someone makes an SOP error, as in a standard operating procedure error, I might not tell them immediately, because there is a learning in that. So they forget to say something. Then I will wait, let the thing develop, and then debrief them. You see how you missed to do that? Now see how this happened as a chain. This is why you have to make that call, or this is why you have to do this, because otherwise this can happen. So there can be a very intricate learning process in letting people make mistakes, basically. Not safety-related mistakes. These are mistakes, procedural mistakes, that carries a good learning curve in them. It's the same reason that I have to let the people land, and I have to let them do, not hard landings, but bad landings. Right, well within the safety zone, well within where they should be, but they need to feel the aircraft. I cannot go in and take over, because then they will never learn. So That's why the safety pilot doesn't really get involved in SOP things, only safety related items. Okay, great question though. Man, I've really missed this. To be able to sit here and answer really qualified, good questions, and it's great. Yeah, I really hope that you guys are enjoying it as well, because I really am. Eric B, how is the passenger air industry in Europe different than the United States, given that Europe has a better developed passenger rail network? Since I haven't flown in America, it's hard to say exactly where the differences are. I think that in the US there are more hub systems, as in you tend to fly more via big hubs. Via here in Europe, it's almost to big extent it's more point to point. My airline has shitloads of hubs everywhere, as in we have over 90 bases, I think. So I don't know, like it is different because the way that there are different countries here and the different cultures and stuff, it's very hard to directly compare them. But the fact is that what's happened during the last few decades is that it's become more similar. So since Southwest appeared as in the US, you have had the low-fare airlines appearing in Europe, trying to emulate Southwest's business model, which means that those are two fairly compatible, very easy to compare models. We still have our flag carriers as well, and they work on that bespoke hub system where they feed into like Amsterdam, for example, and then they fly out from there, or Paris or London or whatever it might be. So you have a mix of both the major flag carriers and the low-fare airlines, and they kind of intertwine. While I think in the States, except for Southwest and a few like Spirit and a few others, the big ones, Delta, American Airlines, United, are still the biggest players. So whatever system they're using, if they're using a regional system below them, for example, that's how it works. I don't know if that makes any sense, but since I haven't kind of dove into the American business that much, I can't give you a clearer answer than that. So Ryan Russell's had a 737 sim experience, was so much fun. Got another hour to do. It's a lot harder than it looks. Yeah, it is. If you look at that's no matter what you say, no matter what you look at. If you look at professionals doing it, it always looks easy. It's like, how hard can it be? When you're there yourself and you realize just the difference in like how the thrust changes the trim, and when you're supposed to like, okay, I have to change the speed, I put some thrust on, the aircraft pitches up, you have to fix that, now you have to take off some thrust. Like only that is a problem when you're in the sim for the first time. So I'm really glad that you enjoy it. More people should do it. And I'm going to see if I can do something on my homepage, maybe to link to sim centers around the world and stuff that people can do that. I would love to do that. So if you guys have a sim center out there and you think that, well, I would like to be on the Mentour Pilot page, contact me, see what we can do. Polustaya Parek. Hi, great to see you after a while. I was waiting for this. These videos about the Spirit Wings and QF380 were great. Not Spirit Wings, you mean the Smart Wings. QF380 were great. I want more of them. Great. Yeah, the more coming up. There are literally thousands of great kind of case studies that I can do. And as long as you guys want to see them, I will create them. And I will put more emphasis into them. And now my Patreons or helping me. I'm sure you've noticed that I have like flight sim kind of simulations coming in. That's my patrons that are helping me out and creating these fantastic videos. Like it makes it so much easier for me if I can just tell some of my patrons like, listen, I need a 737 at 36,000 feet that gets an engine failure at this point facing this way. Can someone do that? And they're like, yeah, I can do that. And like it's an amazing collaborative effort, basically. So thank you once again. Grant Rennie, thanks for the hot dog, man. I haven't eaten any real dinner, so that's great. MDM Aviation, I'm just a private pilot. What do you think is easier for a non-experienced passenger, to land a 737 or a Cessna with the pilot's handicapped? Oh, a Cessna, no doubt. No question. The Cessna, like it's the amount of inertia and speed that you have on a 737 is so much higher. So closer to the ground, if you're making mistakes in Cessna, you can fix it. You can sort it out. You can get high and you can push yourself down and you can get yourself back onto procedure. Like there's so much more that you can do with a Cessna because it's much more forgiving and it's less weight and you can stop on a shorter runway. The 737 or anything in that class, you need to do things fairly right. This is why when I did my video about how you could land a 737, first of all, I'm very clear with this would be very hard in reality. And also, I was only using the autopilot, right? Because I believe if someone gets into the position, into the pilot seat, and needs to land a 737 without using the autopilot, they will not be able to. All right. Maybe if you've done loads and loads of hours in a flight sim, then you might stand a slightly bigger chance. But if you don't have any kind of experience whatsoever, it's going to be very hard to hand fly it. A Cessna, on the other hand, you could potentially figure out like, okay, so this is up and down, and I keep steady like this, and if I just point my nose towards that runway, I will get down, because you will, you know. If you just find the throttle, and even without flaps, you could get it down in more or less one piece. But 737, no, you wouldn't. So for a private pilot, if you're sitting on 737, it's still gonna be hard. Get yourself in a sim and try it. Like it's a really nice experience. Proud Pirate, what is the procedure you follow when your load sheet has a higher zero fuel weight than the predicted zero fuel weight on your flight plan? Yeah, that depends a little bit. So if the zero fuel weight shouldn't, well, yeah, okay. So in most cases, zero fuel weight is actually lower, right? Because there's less passengers pitching up. But if it is higher, there is both tables that we can go into to recalculate how much fuel we need, right? So the aircraft burns a certain amount percent, about 2.5% per ton extra that you burn. So you can go into tables and see that. In most cases, though, I could just ask for a new flight plan. So if I'm in a situation like that and there's a significant change, not just a couple of 100 kilos, that doesn't matter. It's in the like you would see it in the contingency fuel basically. But if it's a long flight and it's a little bit higher, and I think that there's a concern, I could call my flight planning department and say, listen, we have a zero fuel weight of this. Can you update the flight plan? And they will punch in the new zero fuel weight, put it out. We get a new fuel figure needed, and that's the one we're going to use, right? But otherwise, like I said, 2.5% per ton per hour. If you use that, so if you're a ton higher and you're going to fly 2 hours, you need about 5% of the extra, right? It's not on the total. Then you can kind of, so that's what for a ton, it's 25 kilos. You know, it's for 2 hours, that's 50 kilos extra. So it's not a huge. It's not a lot, but you know, it's there. I hope that makes sense. What happens? So still 77. What happens if the IRS alignment fails and the IRS is broken in 77? You can't fly at all without the IRS, right? Does the IRS often cause trouble? No, we can't fly. Like if the IRS doesn't work, if it doesn't align at all, we don't have the instrumentation. Like, we don't have almost anything. You can fly with a degraded IRS. If something happens in flight, you can get it into kind of a like a degraded mode that gives you at least heading and horizon and stuff. But if the IRS doesn't work, we don't fly. No, they don't. They very rarely give any kind of problems. The only times that you have problems with the IRSs is if you're in a very windy situation and you need to update them or you need to align them. So let's say that you're coming into work during hurricane, okay? And the winds are within limits, but just within limits. But they're so strong. Let's say that they're gusting 45, 50 knots, okay? The aircraft might start to move, as in might start to shudder and move around. The IRS needs it to be completely still to be able to align. So if it's feeling movement, it will not align. So this has happened on a few occasions where you just couldn't align the IRSs. It was too much wind to do it. But in that case, you just have to wait. It's as easy as that. Cool. Anna, great to have you here again. Good answer on mental health and pilots. Banning pilots from flying discourages getting help. Better a pilot with depression take time off, get better, get back to work, than suffer without treatment due to fear. Yeah, that's what I wanted to get to. Like anyone, I can, all of the stress that we have all felt now for the last half a year, when you don't know if your industry is going to survive, even less your airline and stuff. That all causes a lot of strain, and if on top of that you get something else, a life stressor like a divorce, or like I said, the death of a child or a spouse or whatever, you need to be able to go in and tell your base captain that, listen, I don't feel fit to fly. I need to go on and get some professional help for a few months to kind of deal with the ongoing potential depression or whatever. And they should just say, all right, yeah, we're going to just take you off flight. Get back to me when you've spoken to your doctor and they say that you're okay. That's the way it should work. But if it becomes a stigma, because in the press, like the press will say, well, the pilot in 2008 had a short span of depression, and they're going to blow that up like, oh yeah, because for 12 years ago that person was depressed there, therefore maybe that's the reason. That's not good. All right, that causes a stigma that is really, really bad. Okay, because anyone who's a normal person can have a stint of that. I can get it. You can get it. Anyone can get it. It's the way that it works. And the key is that we have to search, get help, get better, and then get back again when the episode is over. As easy as that. Balaya Sharakumar, last minute runway change and a problem in the landing. Okay, that's a great question. So, yes, it can be. Okay, depending on why. So if you've gone in, you've done an approach to one runway, and then you do a go around and you decide to go for the other runway, you need to do a complete rebriefing for that runway. And that complete rebriefing requires you to set up the cockpit, set up the FMC, and crucially, you need to do a new performance calculation, especially if you're coming into a wet runway with tailwind. All right, very important. We've had a lot of overruns, 737 overruns during the last few years. Where this has happened, it happened in Florida, like a cargo flight, but I think it was a military flight just a year ago, where they landed with tailwind and wet runway, and they just did it off the runway. Now, obviously, this was also tailwind and wet runway, and it looks like they might have landed very far down the runway. So once again, that has not been confirmed. But yes, if you do a change of runway, you have to take your time to do a proper rebriefing and a proper reset up and an independent calculation of the landing distance. Okay, that's very important. I hope that answers your question. Sean Rady, what are some of your favorite routes to fly with your airline? All right, so it depends. It depends a little bit. Like I've always, and this comes on almost all my live streams, I love flying to Malta because it's a great airport, long runways, ILS from both directions, no mountains around, beautiful, great for training. So Malta is one of my favorites. It's beautiful to fly into Rome as well, to see the Vatican. There's fantastic airports in the north of Europe to fly to just because they're so efficient. Flying into Tallinn is great. When I fly home close to where I come from in Sweden, that's great for another reason. London is cool because there's so much traffic. There's so much things that's nice to do. Marco B, great podcast, but I keep wondering, is that pink phone in the background still working? It is working, it's just not connected, right? And that's for the reason that I was talking about before, that it's very hard to make numeric selections on it nowadays. But I'll show you. I'll show it to you. But I will do it now. This is something that everyone's asking all the time. It's not connected, unfortunately, but like this thing is iconic. Okay, like you really. This is how I dialed, first 5-6 years of my life. If you give this to a child today, they won't believe it, but this is a great piece of kit. It really is. Come, Sandra, come say hello to people.
No, I'm going to bed.
Okay, she's going to bed. Good night.
Don't forget to pick the dog.
Okay. Love these videos. Great, so do I. I hope that you guys are keeping your popcorn or your coffee warm, though mine always gets cold for some reason. Monte Menasco, thank you for what you do. Well, thank you. Pacifica, if the takeoff is the most dangerous part of flying, why so many runways are built towards the city? It's not. No. I mean, takeoff and landings are the statistically more risky part of flight. But like we're still talking minuscule risk here. And the fact is that most runways were built, like on the older airports were built close to the cities because they thought it was smart to, be close to the city for commutes. And then they started realizing that actually it's quite loud, like it's very, very noisy. And then they started building airports further away from the cities, and they started having train connections to them. So I wouldn't say, most airports are not facing a city actually today. And like in Barcelona, for example, we have to turn left almost immediately at 400 feet, or right if you're taking off towards closer to the city, just to get out of the sea as quickly as possible to avoid the noise restrictions. But yeah, it's rare for them now to be built like that. But it's not a safety concern. It really isn't. Will Engels, great Will. Peter, you're doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Yes, this is truly absolutely fantastic. Hi guys, if you want these, I've done loads of new T-shirts, by the way. If you like merch, if you go mentorpilot.com and you go to the shop there, you'll see some of them. Or if you just go to Teespring, or under this video, I think they're linked as well. I've done a cool collection of, my graphic designer Dominic has made a cool collection of almost all of the existing aircraft manufacturers. So Boeing, Airbus, Bombardier. I think we have Antonov, we have Cessna, we have Piper, we have loads of them. So team collection, and you can choose whatever team you are on, and you can get a T-shirt for it. And guys, I want pictures. Okay, if you get yourself one of my T-shirt, or if you get a coffee cup or a cap or whatever, then you can, especially if you're part of the Patreon crew, obviously, you can go into the Discord server and you can send me the picture immediately there. Or just go to mentor.pilot@gmail.com or through my website or whatever, and just send me a picture of you wearing the merch, right? And wear it on airports and stuff. It would be cool if I could see. I think actually, if the first ones who accidentally run into each other both wearing Mentor merch, if you send me a picture of that happening, I will send you something. All right, we'll see what it will be, but I will send you something. Now, I don't want you to cheat. All right, that's if you are in an airport or whatever and you run into someone else who has a Mentor crew T-shirt or whatever. Take a picture and send it to me. Okay. So we're waiting for the Team Gulfstream shirts. All right, I'm gonna tell Dominic to get that done. I can't believe we don't have Team Gulfstream. Petra Olsson, great to see you again. Great to see you, Petra. This is like a family reunion. There's loads of people that I recognize coming back again. I don't know if I'm gonna do this every week though, because the fact is that these videos are actually hurting. This is the most stupid thing ever. But from the feedback I've gotten from people that knows YouTube and stuff, they're saying that these live streams are actually hurting the algorithm, because obviously right now, for example, we have almost 1,000 people watching, but this video is never going to reach more than maybe 20,000 views. So YouTube will actually see this video as a failed video, and they will like, nah, we're going to downgrade this channel a little bit. So next time we're not going to show this new video to as many people, which is horrible, and I don't understand it, but apparently that's the way they work. And if that continues, then we're going to have to switch this in some way, either to the Mentor Aviation app, which I don't want to do completely, but it might be Facebook as well, do a Facebook Live or whatever. That doesn't affect the channel, because my channel is my baby. I don't want it to be disturbed in any way. So there we go. Once again, I dropped. Philippe Francois, how does flex and derated takeoff work? Do you use them? Yeah, we use them every time. Okay, so the way that it works is that if you have a really long runway, okay, the FMC will calculate, or we together will calculate the FMC, and when we do our performance calculation, we put in the aircraft weight, the runway slope, the temperature, the pressure, the runway condition, the runway length, and the and you will see that, okay, if the aircraft uses full takeoff thrust, we'll take off in a third of the runway. Right? We can do that. We can just put full takeoff thrust, and on the third of the runway, we will be off, and over the threshold, we are going to be at 2,000 feet already. All right, that's one way of doing it. However, from a noise perspective, from a fuel usage perspective, from a engine wear and tear perspective, that's not efficient. In fact, it's better to calculate with a lower thrust setting, using up more of the runway, but still having all of the available accelerate stop distance, accelerate go distance, all of the required kind of safety margins there. So that's what we do. With a flex temperature on the Airbus, or the reduced the assumed temperature technique in Boeing, we fool the aircraft. We tell the aircraft on Boeing that the temperature is actually 50 degrees, right? And that will tell the engine that, okay, actually we're just producing this amount of thrust, like if the temperature was 50 degrees. Because with 50 degrees, you'll have less density in the air. It means that it's less thrust coming out. So we're basically telling the engine that, actually, this is how much thrust you need to put out in order to use more of the runway, to save on engine life, on noise, on all of those things. So that's what we do, right? Every single takeoff we do, we try to derate as much as possible, unless there are things negating it. For example, high crosswinds. Because if you have high crosswinds, then we might not want to do that, because we want a little bit more thrust to have some more tail clearance margin. Right? I hope that makes sense. Noah Williams, do you ever sing your cadets the go-around song? I sang that song to Sandra yesterday. For real. I was like, I'm thinking of doing a cover of that. That would be cool. I'd love to do that together with 74 gear. Let's see if we can get that done. Max Witt, but I don't do it with my cadets. No. Love to be on your Sim Center page. Nordic Simulator. Sign us up. Cool stuff. We shall get it sorted. Sam Petros, how did you feel being back in the cockpit? Oh, it was a very weird feeling in the beginning. Because the airline, like my airline, is very, very safety minded. All right, they're very, very aware that having the whole fleet grounded for a long time is going to pose threats on the maintenance side. It's going to pose threats on the pilot training side. So we basically put up a training plan for all the pilots, and depending on how long they've been off, they would be given different types of training. But if I was in the group that had gone to the simulator and had done my 3 takeoffs and landings recently, and I had less days off than most, which meant that me being a training pilot as well, I could go in and I could fly. I couldn't train, I couldn't instruct, but I could go in and fly without any specific training. But it was still a long time off. So getting into the cockpit after that long is kind of like, you're looking around, it's like, am I allowed? Cool. But it turns out that there is a very good reason for that. All right. It's kind of like riding a big, expensive bike with a lot of buttons on it. Like, once you know it, what you'll notice is that the new procedures, and we had quite a lot of new procedures, they are harder to implement when you're a little bit rusty. But the old stuff that you've learned over thousands of hours of flying, it's there. It just comes back. It's just there in your muscle memory, and it just comes back to you. But it takes a while before you kind of can implement and really use the new procedures, which it did for me as well. It took a good few days to kind of like just, okay, so now we need to do it in this way. This is a new call out. Let's see if we can get that in. But yeah, no, it was lovely to be back. It is. Still 77. Do you feel much difference between individual 777-800s, or are they all the same? Do you have any favorite and vice versa? No, you don't. Like it's like driving different new cars of the same brand. Okay, one will have a little bit softer seat, the other one will have a bit firmer seat. You'll feel individual differences in, for example, like some flap levers might move a little bit easier, for example, stuff, individual stuff like that. Generally, the older ones tends to be kind of sat in the chairs a little bit softer, and you can feel that there's been a lot of asses in that seat, so there's the grooves are where they're supposed to be, stuff like that. But no, they're so well built, and they're built in exactly the same way that you can feel slight differences, but you wouldn't be able to say that, oh, I like that one, but I don't like that one. No, not really. Marki Darki 34. Hi, I know you like Malta, but have you ever taken off from the second runway? It seems very short. Yeah, I've landed on it as well. The cross runway, the runway 24 or something. It is short, but it's not that short. It just looks very short because the other runway is humongous, right? It's actually, I think it's around 2,100 meters or something. It's perfectly okay. So I've come in and I've done a visual approaching, a special visual approaching. It can be a little bit tricky. The weather is a bit so and so, but yes, I have both landed and taken off on that one. Holloman 29, if you go to bad weather area, destination all around heavy rain, are you able to get enough extra fuel to have an alternate airport, even if it's 100 miles away? Yeah. And then there's never any let's try it in aviation. Like, you have a plan. In order for you to fly to a place, you need to have an alternate. If the weather is below the stipulated minima at your destination, but then you need to have two alternates, and you need to be able to go to both. Okay, so I can fly to an alternate to a destination where I know that there's too much fog to land, but in order for me to do so, I legally need to have two alternates that are good, that are better than alternate weather. And alternate weather is one step up on the minimas. So if they have a Cat 1 ILS, then you need non-precision minima. Yeah, as in the weather needs to be so good that you can land on a non-precision approach at your alternate. And in this case, you need to have two. So if it's a big foggy area, like sometimes in Europe, you can have all of Germany, for example, completely fogged out. Well, then I can choose London as my alternate. You know, I could go in and try to land in Berlin, and oh, that didn't work, and I'll go to London instead. And I need to take fuel for that. And if I can't, if I cannot lift enough fuel to get me to my destination and then to my alternate, well, then I don't take off in the first place. That's the way it works. Like, there's no, I'm sure it's going to be fine, you know, that will burn off, it's okay. No, never. I'm personally responsible for that. If I would do that and something would happen and there would be an investigation, I would lose my license. As easy as that. I have to be able to motivate to the aviation authority. And you see this. If you read a final report to anything that's happened, if you just go in and you read the way that the press goes into details and stuff about incidents, investigations, they're brutal. They go into every single, like, how did you calculate this? You know, which diagram did you use in the QRH when you decided to descend to this altitude? How did you, you know, you have to be able to motivate what you do. And you're smart if you give yourself a little bit of margin, because then it'll be easier to motivate. Safety. 1, 2, 3, and 4 when it comes to your priorities. Dave Sweet S. Hi Petter, your video about Atlas accident made me think. What will you do in case your colleague does something which make you doubt his or her skills? I'll take controls. That's easy. I do that all the time. Because I'm a training captain, and when we train cadets, sometimes, well, a lot of times in the beginning, for example during landing, I will have to take controls. They will start to become unstabilized. I will say, okay, my controls, I'll stabilize the aircraft, land, then we'll debrief, and then he or she gets a chance again, try it again. Remember not to pump your controls, or not to make too big thrust adjustments or whatever it might be, or, you know, make sure that you don't shy away from the runway. These are some of the most common things, and you know, that's what I will do. If I believe that they have some serious problems, now once again, I am a training captain and type rating examiner, where in that case I will bring it to the attention of whoever needs it. So that's going to be the base captain initially. Tell them that this guy now has done this. Might require me to write a report if it's needed. If I write a report on a colleague, it's always going to be telling them first that it's going to happen. You never do it behind the back, ever. You don't report people behind their backs. At least that's kind of a gentleman's agreement, generally. I would tell them, listen, this was not, I consider this being a safety risk. This will be something extreme, right? This will not be something they do as a mistake, okay? It will be a constant show of complete lack of understanding about something that they should know, for example. Then that might escalate. But in my 18, almost 19-year career, never happened so far. It's happened in the training environment, but not like suddenly flying with someone online and doing it. No. Sarah Ansel, thank you very much for your support again. Peter Traveler as well. So, Blancolirio said he didn't like landing on the 737NG because of the limitation on flaps on landing. Risk of tail strike, 2 wheels and main gear. What's your thought? As in, I mean, I don't think so. But I mean, the difference between me and him is that he's so much experience on different aircraft types. So it might be that if I start flying the 747 or the Airbus 320, I suddenly think that the 737 was hard to land. I've flown it for 18 years, so I don't think that it's such an issue, especially not tail strike on landing. That's very hard to do still. But it is a tricky aircraft to land. It is supposed to be the trickiest in the whole Boeing fleet. The 737-800 and 900 are supposed to be the trickiest ones to do good landings consistently. Okay, but let's see. We can see if we can have a look at the landing maybe. Let's see if we get a little bit forward. So this is about a minute long. This is me and a colleague of mine in a simulator. I think this is a crosswind landing, so that's what I'm trying to show here. There we go. Touchdown, thrust reverses, unlocked, and there we go. Full reverse thrust. As you can see, you have the speed brake coming up immediately on touchdown. Thrust reverses, we select them within a second of main gear touchdown. And this is with flap 30. You maintain the thrust until you have the aircraft under control down to taxi speed, and about 60 knots, you go back to idle, but you do not cancel reverses until you're absolutely sure that you can vacate the runway. Right? Cool. So I just wanted to play around a little bit with this. Hope that makes sense. Okay, cool. So we're running up towards the end of the super chat questions here, guys. Let's see. Tenente, thank you very much for your support. If you had a question, then just write it in to me. Go into the Mentour Aviation app and go to submit feedback. You can send me a direct message there, and I'll try to answer it. Okay. Sarah Ansel, Team Boeing hoodie. I love the travel mug. I use it for my morning coffee to walk to work. Great. I need pictures of that. If you send me pictures of you using the merch, then you might be featured on Facebook and maybe even on Instagram stories of like the user of the week. Dominic is working hard on doing that, so that might happen. So keep sending me those pictures. I love to hear that you're liking it. Have you ever offloaded passengers due to heat? Yeah, well, I've stopped people from boarding because it's been too hot on board, and we haven't had an APU that could provide any AC. I haven't offloaded them because of heat, because I've been lucky enough, and I've been, one time I had to start an engine on stand in order to provide air conditioning, but in most cases you can kind of solve things. All right, I haven't offloaded anyone though. Harland Andersson, is your mass and balance calculation now computerized? Yes, we actually do it ourselves. So we get a load, kind of a lid, it's called, a loading information document. And from that, we input where everyone is seated and where all of the cargo is and how much fuel we have and everything. And then we get a document out of that we can use for FMC. So yes, we've left paper load sheets in my airline. We're going over to completely computerized ones that we then have to send a copy of away before we take off, so that there is some kind of record of how we did it. Yeah, that's how it works now. So some more chat questions here. It takes from the normal chat. Hi Captain. Have you ever had an issue with fuel icing? If so, how did you handle it? No, I've had, you have to monitor when it's extremely cold during the winter, for example. Sometimes you're up flight for 410 and you get into temperatures of -70 or whatever up there, which is extremely cold. You have to monitor the fuel temperature. So if it you cannot go below -43 in the tanks. If that's the case, you have to descend. I've been close to it, but you need to normally fly for a really long time up there in order to get the fuel temperatures down that low. So it never really became an issue. We came into hotter air before that happened, but you have to monitor it and keep track of it. More questions here. What Airbus plane would you fly? Oh, the Airbus 350, without a doubt. I'd love to get my hands on the Airbus 350. It looks absolutely fantastic. Captain, do you allow aviation enthusiasts in the flight deck once you are properly grounded? Normally I do. Right now it's a bit of an issue with the whole COVID thing. So right now there's not too much visits to the flight deck, unfortunately. And that's for, for like spreading reasons, and all that you would have masks on and stuff. There could be a discussion about it, but I think right now it's more of an issue than it used to be. I used to always love, especially after landing when I have a few minutes over, I'd love to show the cockpit. Captain, what is the purpose of the increased VR procedure? Oh, okay. So that's if you have a second segment climb, like there's a lot of mountains, for example. If you have a long runway, you can use an increased climb procedure, which is called, where you actually allow yourself to rotate at a higher speed in order to have more energy and climb steeper after departure. And we don't use it. Okay, what is the difference between a static takeoff and a rolling takeoff? You can figure it out. Like the static takeoff is if you stand the brakes and you increase thrust up to 40%, release the brakes, press toga, and you go. Rolling takeoff is when if you let that thing happen while you're rolling. So for example, you're rolling onto a runway, you're still moving forward as you're setting 40%. You're increasing the speed slightly as the thrust levels moves up, or as the thrust goes up to 40%, and then you just press toga and the go. All right, so you never stop the aircraft, basically. Captain, why do you think there's such a safety difference between Part 121 flying and Part 91 flying? That's FAA rules. So is that between like private flight and commercial? In that case, then it has to do with a lot of things, including rules, training, regulations of flight time, things like that. But there's loads. It's very, very complex. It's not easy to go in and say this is the reason. Cool, guys. That's close to an hour and a half of live stream. That is much longer than I was anticipating this to be. And I'm actually happy to see that there wasn't too many questions, at least on the super chat, about the whole of the Indian accident. My heart goes out, my thoughts goes out to all of the families of the victims and the hurt people that are in hospitals. I hope that we will know very soon what the reason was behind that very tragic accident, and I hope that we can learn something from it to keep it from happening again. But until we know more, it's not worth speculating from my point, I think. So last point here, how's your family? They're great. They're all safe and healthy, which is the main thing. We're now just hoping that the schools will open up in September, so that they can go back to meeting their friends and some kind of normality, even if it's with masks. And that's it, guys. Before you go, once again, consider becoming part of the Patreon crew. All right, it's a huge help for the channel. You can also go in, and I want you to go in to mentorpilot.com, and in fact I want you to do that right now after this. You have news in there, you have quizzes. I put new quizzes up. Our administrator here, Sam, who's taking care of the questions in the chat, he's made some really good technical questions about the 737 that you can try out. They're quite tricky though, I'm just warning you. So you need the pass mark of 75% in order to progress through it. But I also have questions. I have actually done a video about runway excursions, right? Go and check out that video, and then go to mentorpilot.com, go to the quizzes, and take the one about runway excursions, right? There is a quiz in mentorpilot.com about that, and see if you've understood it. because I think a lot of the questions that people have regarding runway excursions were actually covered in that video. You need to see that video in order to be able to pass the 75% pass mark on the quiz. But there's loads of stuff in there. You can get the team collection of t-shirts, but become a member. Remember to write yourself up as a cadet, or if you want to support but you don't want to be on Patreon, well, then you can support through the different. You can become a second officer, you can become a first officer as well, and if you do, then that will also grant you access to the premium membership in the Mentour Aviation app, right? So go to mentorpilot.com, check it out. Have an absolutely fantastic day wherever you are, and I'll see you next time I do a live stream. Bye-bye.